Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that we have a nice crowd that came out to support our Pathfinders. And now that you're here, we're going to lock the doors. And no, I'm really excited about this. And I'm sure most of you that saw the little promo video are probably pretty excited as well. I know I had a lot of fun with Ellie and Jeannine making the video, and they're just really funny. And so I'm interested to see how this goes, kind of no holds barred. I'm not going to be up here. There's just going to be them with microphones. So we'll see how this ends up. But I'm sure we're going to have plenty of laughs. And I think we'll leave here seeing just God's fingerprints all over their marriage, just bringing them together. And it's really astounding hearing that story. So without further ado, Ellie and Jeannine, if you guys would come up. And I've set up my phone here, so we are streaming live on YouTube. So this will be recorded, and it'll be up for anyone that wants to watch it again or send it to friends. It will be up. And the way that we have it set up is the couch is y'all's, and you want to stand? Okay. Yeah, you can use those microphones. I'll have to think about how I'm going to stream this. You want us to sit down? It'd make it easier for streaming. Yeah. Unless you don't want it streamed, then you can have free roam. Yeah, exactly.
Oh. I can't see anyone.
I don't like lights and whew.
Okay, do you guys want the G version, the PG version, or the what version?
I just want to say, after the performance by all these Pathfinders, so romantic, I'm ready to tell my story. Woo! They did an awesome job. Just beautiful, just beautiful. So much talent.
Hey, you guys are good to go.
I guess the title of this story, we can call it The Impossibility Becoming a Possibility.
Since both of us lived well over a half a century before we met each other, I want to summarize very quickly my life up to the point where I met him. And I'm a teacher, so I can summarize really fast. I was born in Wisconsin, and at the age of 7, my parents accepted a call to the mission field. And so I spent a good part of my childhood in Venezuela, in the Inter-American Division. And that's where I learned to love the Spanish language, the Spanish culture, the Spanish food, and I just had a totally good experience living in the mission field. When I was ready to go to academy, my parents sent me up to Wisconsin Academy because we didn't have an Adventist academy in Venezuela, and they were firm believers in Christian education. So they made that sacrifice and sent me up there. I met my late husband while I was in academy, but we didn't really start dating until I was in college. And after my junior year out at La Sierra, he asked me to marry him. He asked my father, and my father said, yes, as long as you finish your last year of college, which I did. We had 2 children, Carlin, my daughter Carlin, and her husband that live up in Pennsylvania, and our 2 grandchildren, Hudson and Reese. And then Johnny, many of you know Johnny, 3 grandchildren there, little Loki, you see him with me every Sabbath. So we had 2 children. Moved to Chicago, my husband finished his degree in medical technology, and then we got the call to go to Sandy View Academy in Albuquerque. And I worked there for 13 years as girls' dean and Spanish teacher, and my husband worked for dermatologists in Albuquerque. From there, we got a call to go to Ozark Adventist Academy up in Arkansas. And I also served there for 13 years. 13 is my magic number. Teaching and being girls' dean.
Got married on the 13th also.
So we probably had been at Ozark for about 3 years when my husband, strong, healthy man his entire life, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Just a deadly killer. And he died 11 months later. This was in 1995. And I just felt so fortunate with the job I had, being surrounded by a dorm full of girls, staff that were very supportive, and they made that time so easy for me. If you say easy, they surrounded me with their love and understanding, and so that really helped me a lot get through that difficult time.
I was born in the most beautiful island in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico. Back then, it was chances that sometimes you would not be born in a hospital. So I was born in a house with midwives. So I was very young when I moved down to New York. Stayed there for about the first 10 years of my life, came back to Puerto Rico. Went to college in Puerto Rico, Antillean College, which is now the Antillean Adventist University. The first day that I came to college, I met this one girl in the administration building. I wound up marrying her 2 years later. We had 3 children and 2 grandchildren. After college, I ministered in Puerto Rico for 21 years as a pastor evangelist, and at times I had up to 5 churches ministering at the same time. After a few years, I decided that I would go to further my studies and went to Andrews University, got my doctorate degree in ministry. And then at the very tail end of my tenure there, I received a call from the General Conference asking me if I wanted to be a chaplain in the Air Force. I had already expressed interest in doing that, but there was, that's a whole story behind that. So probably some other day I'll have to talk to you about that. But God opened the doors for me. When all the doors would be opening, they would be closing and opening and closing. God had a purpose for me, because if I would have delayed 4 months more, I would have never been able to come into the military because of my age. Now, my late wife, Ida, she had a series of health issues for long term. Based on the diabetes that she had. She got complicated with cirrhosis of the liver. And in a procedure that they were doing, they found that her kidneys were shutting down and so forth. So she came up with liver failure, kidney failure, heart failure, and passed away about 4 days or 5 days after her procedure. At that point in time, I said to myself, I have no intentions of marrying again. After 36
Never say never.
years. After 36 and a half years of marriage, I said, I'll just be a grandpa and I'll be a dad to my kids, and that's it. I will never marry again.
Well, God had other plans. I was in the dorm one evening there at Ozark, being a dean, finished worship with my 30, 40 girls, depending, I don't remember how many I had in the dorm at the time. Study hall had started, and the RAs had checked everybody in, and things were quiet, which is always wonderful for a dean, although when they're quiet, you sometimes worry. You'd rather have a little noise. But I was sitting there in my office going through the mail, and I came across The Record, which is a magazine for the Southwestern Adventist Union. Yeah. I was just looking through it as I always did when we got the record. I came to the back part reading the job opportunities and things, and I came across the AdventistSingles.org. I had seen that for years and years, advertised the back of that magazine. In fact, I'd seen it, but I'd never even paid any attention to it. This was the very first time that I stopped and said, I have nothing to do. I wonder what it's like in that website. God's timing is incredible, because why just at that point did I decide to check it out? So I typed in AdventistSingles.org, and when I went in there, it said, you may not give out any personal information, no last names, no emails, no street addresses, no telephone numbers, no personal information. You have to use an alias, and you have only a 14-day free trial. Well, I wasn't going to pay for it, so I thought I'll just do it for 14 days and check it out. And I went in there and I looked, and nothing really sparked my interest. There were people from all over the country, and so I thought, well, this is interesting, and I went out. Over the next few days, I got little notes that said, smiley faces, have a great day, have a nice day, and stuff like that, and I sent some back. But that was the extent of my looking on that website.
Since I didn't have any intentions to remarry, my kids decided to corral me and said, okay, Dad, we've got to ask you a question. Says, do you think you'll ever get married again? And I said, no. He says, well, why do you think that? He said, I told him, he says, because the person that probably would interest me would have to have these qualities. And I mentioned to them 25 different qualities
25?
that this person needed to have in order for me to be interested in her. So when I told them all, and I went one by one of those qualities, they looked at me and they said almost in unison, they said, Dad, you'll never get married because you'll never find one with all those qualities. So one day I was about 7 months after my wife died, I decided to look into a website that my endorser, which is from the General Conference, the director of the chaplain's ministry, gave me some time ago so that I could relate it to our troops, our Adventist military guys, in case if they were interested in writing to some Adventist single and just be able to connect there with Adventist girls or boys. And I decided to check that out because I was curious to see what was all that site about. So I went in there and I had to do my profile. So I put my alias name, Taino. Anyone knows what Taino is? Taino is a name for a tribe of the Indians in Puerto Rico. So that was my alias. So I put all my information in there, reluctantly trying to be as careful but as honest as possible. And as I filled all the different areas that they were requiring me to fill out, I decided then to look into who was inside that website. It was over thousands and thousands of men and women in that website. So I went to the first person that I saw there, and there was no interest. Not even one little bit of the qualities that I was looking for. I went to the second one, and there was nothing. And the third person, I looked into their profile. It caught my attention because it said, "Love chocolate."
That was my alias.
That was her. And I said to myself,
I told you, chocolate is the secret.
So I said to myself, who in the world loves chocolate as much as I do? Can't be. So I went there and looked at her profile. And I went one by one looking at all the different details of that profile. And I said, it can't be. this can't be. I don't know about this person here, but I don't think she's telling all the truth about this, because this can't be. And I said to myself, she has all these little qualities that I'm looking for, but it can't be possible. So I just left that with third person there and kept on looking at other profiles. That evening, that night, I looked about over 300 profiles.
Just like a man.
And after looking at all those, I decided that I would go back to the number 3. Love chocolate. It just hold my attention. It was just there, just tugging me. And I looked at the profile, I read it about 2 or 3 times to see if I was missing something and all the things said to me, says, you know what, you gotta get to know this person better. So that evening, I wrote to her specifically these words. It would be great to get to know you. Looks like you are a person I would be interested in. I speak Spanish, and I'm looking for a woman that speaks Spanish as well. You can find more info on my profile until later, Taino. But what happened is that at the end of her profile, one of the big clinchers for me was that she said, and I speak fluent Spanish, and I said, yes.
Okay, so I'm back in the dorm one evening, and I have 4 days left in my free trial. It's about ready to expire. And I had this little note from Taino, and he told me to look at his profile. So I did. And I also was just so surprised to see how many things we had in common. Both born into the Seventh Adventist Church. Both coming, because you could write things about yourself. You just couldn't give away names or anything like that, but you do know where you live. I knew he lived in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was in Gentry, Arkansas. He came from a ministerial family. His brother, his uncle, his father, ministers. My brother, my father, a minister. A lot of the things that he put that he liked to do were the very same things that I like to do. He wrote that he loved God, and that he tried to live a life that reflected God's love. And that was very important to me, for someone to write that. He loved to cook and would be willing to teach how to cook Puerto Rican food.
Yes.
And pets, that was the one thing, he didn't have pets. And I had put that I had 3 dogs and several cats. He didn't mention that, but he said that he was a minister for 21 years, and I thought, ooh, scary. And a chaplain, 16 years, he was an active chaplain. But I found his profile so interesting. I could relate to it so well, and so I wrote him back. And I remember, I didn't write him back until the next day. I didn't want to look eager or anything. So I made him wait. I read it.
She made me wait 1 whole day.
I read it. I went and did my stuff the next day, but that night I wrote him a little note and said, thank you for writing to me. I read your profile, and my interest is sparked.
And I said, yes.
And I tell him that the bonus is that you're Latin, because I love the Latin culture, and you speak Spanish. And so it looks like we have a lot of things in common. Later, Jeannine, because we could tell our first names. So, that's what we...
I looked at her profile again once and twice, and I looked at what I was looking for. And these are some of the things that I was looking for a person if I would be interested. Is I would like to meet a lady that is caring and seeking a serious relationship. I don't even know why I put that, because she has to have a very good sense of humor, be a fun person, intelligent, loving, getting along with people, like to travel, musically inclined, ability, spiritual, knowing how to cook is important, but I will be glad to teach ethnic cuisine. Besides having a wonderful personality, I'm also looking for a lady that is attractive as well. I like sports and would like to have a companion that enjoys nature and sporting events. So these were some of the qualities that I was looking for. There was much more when I looked at her description, I said, I kept on doing check mark and check mark and check mark, and he says, okay, I think this is a big contender for me. And I think the clincher for her in relation to looking at my profile is that I wrote to her a message, and then I showed her a picture of me and my Mustang convertible. And she wrote to me back and says, what is a chaplain doing with a Mustang convertible? And I wrote back to her and I told her, God wanted me to have one.
Well, I had 4 days left to get to know this guy without giving him any information. So I said, we wrote back and forth, you can write. And talked about, our interests, different things that we did, our families and things like that. And then I mentioned to him, I think it was like 2 days in, my profile is going, subscription, whatever, trial is going to end. And I guess we're just going to be like passing ghosts in the sky. And then he decided to get serious.
I said, we will see about that. So that evening, I went into what we call the yearbook for the Seventh-day Adventists. And that's where they have all the pastors, teachers, all the organizations, institutions, churches, academies, colleges, whatever, hospitals. All that information is there. I knew because of her profile that she lived in Gentry, Arkansas. I knew that she was a teacher in one of our institutions. I did not know what institution it was, but I knew that she was there in Arkansas. So I went into the yearbook and checked Southwestern Union, and under Southwestern Union there was different organizations, and I went all the way down to where something was in Gentry, Arkansas. And I saw that, and I saw that it was Ozark Academy in Gentry, Arkansas. So I decided to go secretively look into the website of Ozark Academy, and I went to their website, and when I went to the website, I found all the teachers and the pictures of the teachers, and as I was scrolling down, I saw her picture. I knew her name was Jeannine, so I said, okay, this is it. There can't be another Jeannine here in Ozark Academy. So I saw that she had a personal email address. I went in there and sent her a note, a little message, and I said to her, for those who want to, there's nothing impossible. Ha, I found you.
And he also put there, I hope you're not upset that I found you. Well, of course not. So then we had to forget the website. We, we could go ahead and email each other, and we could talk on the telephone. And we did that extensively for 13 days until he came to visit me.
So, 13 days later, after we met online, I said, no, I got to go visit this person. I don't know if she's really a ghost or what, but I need to see personally if we have some connection person to person. By the time that we have, in those 13 days that we had met, I had already felt that I'd known her for years. I mean, we talked about so many different things, and it was just like knowing this person for a long time. But on top of that, a feeling that we already knew each other and that there was just a connection there with words and so forth, and even on the phone. I mean, she had the sweetest voice, and when she would say goodbye in the evenings, that just really tugged my heart. Says, bye. Yes, I'll see you tomorrow. No. But it's interesting that I said, okay, I need to see you personally. So I had a trip. I had some vacation time, and I went to visit her after the 13 days after we met.
So when I went to Tulsa to pick him up, it was late at night, and it was break for the kids. I was standing there at the end of because you couldn't go up to meet the people at the gate anymore. He was I thought I'm going to watch as the passengers come down to see if I recognize him. And I recognized him right away. He looks like a pastor. He walks like a pastor. He dresses like a pastor. That's him. So I kind of got behind another person, and when he got to the whatever they had there, the little gate there, I kind of stepped out and I said, "Pastor Castañón."
And I told her, "What's this about Pastor Castañón? It's Ellie."
And he gave me a big hug, and so we drove all the way home, back to the dorm. Talked for quite a while. Long time we talked. We had an hour and a half drive home, and then there at the dorm. And then before he went to the guest room there in the dorm, he gave me a kiss. By the kitchen sink. I knew he was the man for me. That's why I like Latinos like this.
I'm blushing. Is this color my shirt? Anyway.
And you know what? He still kisses me by the kitchen sink a lot. And then when I get teary-eyed, he says, "Are you getting sentimental?" And I'm like, "No, I'm chopping onions."
Well, what I would like to say is this. Throughout all our time that we were meeting and all this event of getting to know each other, we knew that it was God's intervention in our lives that brought us together.
Amen.
It was His will for us to be together because when my wife died, about a month after, I received a call from the Air Force headquarters saying, "Ellie, your time is up for deployment. We've got you to deploy to Iraq." And they never ask you if you want to deploy or not. They tell you, "This is your assignment," and you go. But they personally said, "You know, Ellie, I know that your wife has died recently. It's about close to a month. Says, I want to know if you're ready to deploy." And I said, "You know what, it's going to be very hard, but I'll ask my kids to see how they feel about it." Says, "Okay, you ask them, I'll call back in a few days and we'll talk." So I talked to my kids and they all said, "Dad, you know, we just lost our mom. And Iraq, the war in Iraq was very hard at that time. And they said, if you go to Iraq and something happens to you, you die or whatever, it's going to devastate us." And I relayed that information to the Air Force. And they said, "There's no problem. We'll catch you some other time." And they did. 7 months later, or close to 7 months, about 14 days before I met Jeannine, they came back and said, oh, it was a little bit before 14 days, but I was supposed to deploy 14 days right before I met Jeannine. And I was supposed to deploy to Afghanistan. They had put me on a deployment list and everything was going fine, but 14 days later, I received another call from the headquarters and they said, "Ellie, there's a change of plans. There's an individual that we need to send out to Afghanistan ahead of you. So you're off the hook for right now." And if I would have been deployed, if I would have gone to deployment on the first time that they told me, and even on the second time, I would have never been around to go into the website and to check out Love Chocolate. So we knew that God was leading us throughout this whole event to have so much similarities, to have so much things that we were in common, to have a person that had all the qualities that I was looking for and so forth. It wasn't by chance. I truly believe that God was in the midst of all this event.
So we visited each other. He came to visit me, and wow, 1st of November, right?
4th of November.
4th of November, and asked me to marry him. And I said yes, of course. And I went down to meet his children at Thanksgiving time, because you're kind of hesitant because they'd lost their mother not too long before that. And so I went to meet them. They were very receptive and embracing. What do you say? Embracing. We went to stay at his daughter's house, and the first night that I was there, I went into my bedroom and I pulled back the blanket, and there was a fake snake curled up in my bed. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I put it around my neck and I sat there. And I knew they were outside the door, all of them with their ears there, waiting for me to scream. Finally, they couldn't stand it, and they cracked the door. And I sat there swinging that snake around. I told them, you know what? I don't scare easy. I'm a girl's dean. I don't scare easy. And so it was his son. Such a joker. I knew I was going to be okay in the family. They did that to me the first day.
So, being in Boston and her in Arkansas, we're 1,300 miles apart, a little bit over 1,300 miles apart. I was anxious to go back and visit with her, but it wasn't that easy. But in December, right before Christmas, I decided that I had a few days that I can probably sneak around and go visit her. And that's what I did.
And you're not supposed to sneak when you're in the military.
It's called AWOL. Absent without leave. And I had to be back by the 24th. This was about the 21st of December, 22nd. I had to be back by the 24th because we had Christmas Eve candlelight service there. And I'm the senior Protestant chaplain. I have to be there. There's no if or buts about it. So I went to visit her a few days, came back. On my way back, there was a big storm there in Chicago, and I got stranded in Chicago. Had to spend the night there, and finally got a flight the next day, the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, which I was cutting it very short. I was barely getting to my base there in Massachusetts, changed my clothes, and dashed right down to the candlelight service. I made it like a photo finish. And no one ever knew about that. You guys are probably the first ones that know about it.
I went to visit him right after Christmas to Boston, and because I also wanted to see, where he lived and everything. And one of the things I noticed when I walked into his house was it was so clean. He also is a very neat person, which is something we have in common that we appreciate about each other. But his way of decorating just...
Before you get to that, when I went to visit her, that's one of the things I noticed about her apartment. It was just spotless. And I remember her vacuuming every single day that we were there. Chloe was a nice little cat there, and she just cleaned and cleaned. Anyway, but the thing is that there were so many different things that I noticed during that weekend that I was there that just really called my attention. This is really a person that really has all the things that I'm looking for. She was neat. She knew how to deal with serious situations, family events that were going on there. And I just knew that she was not only the right person in many ways, but she was mature. She knew how to deal with issues and conflicts and all these things there. And it really spoke to me big time.
Yeah, our first date, the next day after I first met him, I took him to play racquetball because I wanted to check his endurance. And he did pretty good. But when I went to his house, he likes eagles. And I walked into one room and it was like a museum. There were curio cabinets and shelves, and he had eagles, hundreds, I think, eagles. And then he had other areas where he had nativity sets, because his wife used to collect those, and they were just all neatly organized. And then in the living room, he had a long table covered with knickknacks from Puerto Rico and Hawaii. And then the room I stayed in upstairs was a Hawaiian room, and he had on the wall, the invisible Hawaiian lady, just the coconut shells. Coconut? Yeah. And a lei and a grass skirt nailed to the wall. And I was like, this is something that we're going to have to address. Which we have. have, because we got rid of most of the eagles, and you saw a lot of the eagles, TJ. He's got, a huge collection, but we whittled away a lot of it. Nativity scenes we gave away, and they packed away, and we have like 3 left. And but he's such a good-natured person about that. But that was something I found interesting when I visited him, that he had all these collections of things.
I must have made a real good impression on her. I decided to take it down to the basement, where I have my exercise equipment, a treadmill and other exercise machine equipment they had there. And as she was going down the stairway, she must have had a weak knees or something, but she tripped on the stairways down, and if I wouldn't have been in front of her to catch her, she would have fell. But every time now that she goes down stairways, I am there to catch her without falling. In March, she had her birthday, and it was the first time that I had that we were together for her birthday. So I decided to do something special for her from a distance. I called a flower shop near where the academy was, and I ordered.
He ordered. The registrar came up to my classroom where I was teaching and brought me 58 yellow roses. And that's what the kids said. Oh. And that's the kind of man he is. The man you guys see is the man Ellie is everywhere. He's sweet. He's considerate. He's loving. He's a Christian. And this is one of the things that I feel so fortunate about, that that God brought this man into my life. So we got married.
And before we got married, I had to make a list of places where I would want to go for my next assignment, because I was due for another assignment. And I hadn't filled one out at the time, but the person that does the assignment in the Air Force says, Ellie, you have to do that. So knowing that we were going to get married, I had to look for a place that was near Arkansas so that we can see each other even every so often. And Jeannine had a contract for 1 more year in the academy, so she couldn't just pick up and leave. So I filled out a dream, what we call the dream sheet, and the places that I was looking, I was about 4 hours away from Gentry or so. And I was trying to look for a place that was closer to Gentry. And a friend of mine says, there's a base in Oklahoma City that has not advertised the position that you are needing and that requires for your pay grade. And I said, okay, let me find out. And I pulled some strings around, and all of a sudden, the Friday, a few days before our wedding, I get a call from my boss and says, Ellie, you got an assignment. And I said, okay. I was a little bit hesitant because I didn't know what it was going to be. And he said, you got an assignment. They're sending you to Oklahoma City, to Tinker Air Force Base. And I said, yes, again. I knew that God was leading us all through all this process without any doubt. Because from Tinker, I could leave Tinker as soon as I got off work and get to Gentry. Usually it takes about 3 hours, 10 minutes. With my Mustang, I did it for 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Well, anyway, so we got married in Bella Vista, Arkansas, in the beautiful Cooper Chapel. I realized what a close family Ellie has, because all of his brothers and sisters, his 2 sisters, 2 brothers, all of his children, their spouses, my daughter Carlin, my sister Becky and her family were there. They all came to our wedding there at the Cooper Chapel. And it was interesting because Ellie just about performed the whole ceremony except pronouncing us husband and wife.
I did. I did the whole wedding ceremony. And I wish I would have done a little bit more, because when I went to get our papers at the Arkansas court there at Fayetteville, or Bentonville, which is where, and I was filling all that out there and so forth, and I asked the lady, since we're in Arkansas, can I marry us? Can I marry us And she looked at me and said, you're crazy? I said, no. And so I had to get someone to pronounce us husband and wife. And my brother, who is an ordained minister, he came and pronounced us husband and wife. But that's all he did. All the rest I did. I performed and officiated my wedding ceremony.
That was something different.
Total.
So, yeah, for our honeymoon, we rented a tree house in Eureka Springs. That was very romantic. It was a very beautiful place to be up in a tree house. The night of our wedding night, we went to eat at the Crescent Haunted Hotel. If anybody knows about that in Eureka Springs, it's supposed to be the most haunted hotel in the United States. We went to eat there. Tell them what happened that night.
We had finished eating our food, our main dish, and whatever. And the waiter comes around and picks up our dish. And he goes walking down with his tray or whatever. And all of a sudden we hear dishes all over the floor. Crashing all over the floor. And everyone looked around and says, the ghost did it. That was the ghost. Because we were in a haunted hotel restaurant. So after our honeymoon, it was time for me to separate again, go back to my Air Force Base in Massachusetts, and she stayed back until I came back to Tinker about late July. But for that 1 year, Jeannine and I commuted back and forth for that year. And in May 2006, the Air Force Base moved all her household goods to our house here in Edmond, Oklahoma. Our life today revolves around our children and our grandchildren and our church. That's basically what I realized when I married Jeannine that I was marrying a grandma. It clicked all of a sudden. Says, you know what? I'm marrying a grandma. She had one grandchild. And now, soon after we got married and up to date, we got 7, which is interesting.
Grandpa?
When we came to Edmond, we had no idea where Edmond was or what Edmond was, like the church. But we looked in the yellow pages back then, and we saw that Edmond church, so we decided to come. And the reception of the Edmond church was fantastic. First person that we met was basically Jose. And he embraced, when he knew that I was Puerto Rican, that was it. We were like this, we connected. And then when he knew that I was a military chaplain in the Air Force, he went over there right away and got a lieutenant colonel that used to be here, Johnson. And she came over and talked to me, and I was surrounded with loving people. I kept on looking for other places the next few Sabbaths, and I said, no, I'm going back to Edmond. That's where I belong.
And I remember Marie, because you were so welcoming and you made us feel so welcome, and she was trying to teach me how to pronounce her name, Marie. Rhymes with Marie. Something to that effect.
I want to finalize with our success story that we sent to the Christian singles dating site. This is what I wrote to them for our success story. When I first entered the Christian Singles website, I was skeptical. I was not really interested in a relationship, but just curious. The first day I entered, among the many ladies in the site, I met Love Chocolate. She was the third profile I reviewed, and I couldn't believe that she had all the qualities and the personality that I was looking for, if, in fact, I would become interested in establishing a relationship. I decided to write to her that night, and she answered the following evening. From that moment on, I had no doubt that God had introduced us to each other, and that we were meant to be together forever. We just got married on the 13th of March 2005, and are filled with joy that we found each other and can share our lives together by the grace of God, and thanks to your website. Thank you once again for being a blessing to us. Both Jeannine and I are so thankful and appreciative of for your ministry. We would have never known each other if it weren't for you. You know, and this is the last thing that I have for you tonight. Many say that marriage is a roller coaster. We say that our marriage is heaven bound. We haven't experienced the ups and downs. To us, each day has been a blessing. When we wake up in the morning, the first thing we say to each other is, "Good morning. How was your night? How do you sleep?" Lately, it's more how you sleep, because now once you get older, it's just the sleep is not as easy as before. But it's a good morning. And I remember since we first got married and we've gotten together in our home, Jeannine used to wake me up and every morning with a song.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful feeling. Everything's going my way. I do. I'm one of these people like sit up in bed and I sing.
And that's our story. What's your story?